Hello, my name is Lakin and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing all the books that I read in January to start off the year of 2022. So I'm just going to go in order of when I read them instead of going through and being like, oh, here's all my 5 stars, 4 stars, and so on and so forth. So, I started the year off with reading, let me get over to the side so I can put the book up here. I started off by reading Magic Required, which is the 3rd book in the Wizard for Hire series by Obert Sky. And first off, love the name, Obert. I genuinely adore it. And secondly, this book I gave 5 stars. It was an amazing conclusion. I can't go into too much without spoiling it because it is the final book in the trilogy, but I'm definitely going to be doing a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review of the series as a whole if you're really interested in reading it. I don't know if this is YA or middle grade. Maybe it's like younger YA, older middle grade, something like that. But it was so much fun. Essentially, we're following this child who hires a wizard. And one of the best things about this book is you don't actually know if they're a wizard or not the whole time. By the end, you know if it's one way or another, but in the first book, there were things that happened where I was like, is this just a kooky old man, or is this man actually a wizard? And my first book was a 5-star read, so very happy about that. The next 2 books I read were novellas. And they were in the Four Kingdoms series by Melanie Sellier. The first novella was Happily Ever Afters, which was a reimagining of Snow White and Red Rose. The other novella was A Midwinter's Wedding, which is a Frog Prince retelling. And both of these are just short novellas where we see side characters getting their love stories as well, alongside the main story. And I gave Happily Ever Afters 4 stars. I just really liked those side characters, and I thought their budding romances were very cute. And I gave Midwinter's Wedding 3 stars, and I genuinely liked it as well. But after reading them back to back, I preferred the other novella first, so I gave this one 3 stars. Then the next book I read was another book in this series. I actually ended up finishing this series, The Four Kingdoms, and I'm also going to be doing another series overview, just talking about this series as a whole. The 4th book, called The Princess Game, and this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I gave this one 2 stars. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed reading it, but at the end of it, I was just like, meh. I don't know. I liked how this retelling was done, but compared to the other ones in the series, this one kind of falls a little flat. But essentially, the princess that we follow, who is Sleeping Beauty, she's not actually asleep, which I appreciate. She just has to play dumb for this curse, but she's not actually dumb, and so she has to pretend that she's really dumb and airheaded for everyone else, otherwise she gets really sick, and then the prince falls in love with her and breaks the curse. Sleeping Beauty, it's not really a spoiler. I liked her, But I don't know. The curse part was really convoluted to, because like it kept changing, and it was just kind of like, The next book I read was a manga, and I gave this one 4 stars. It is Soulless Manga Volume 1 by Gail Carriger. This is just a mangaization, I guess, of Soulless, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, series of all time. Gail Carriger is my favorite author, and so I finally read the manga, and I gave it 4 stars. It was really cute. I thought the artist did an amazing job with depicting all the characters. Like, they were exactly how I imagined them. The only one that wasn't exactly how I imagined him was Lord Macon. I don't know. I figured that he would be very buff and rough and like have a beard and stuff like that, but as you like read the book and like look at it all, it just flows together so well. And yeah, it was just so much fun to like get to kind of see this, because this is probably the closest we'll ever get to like a movie or TV show, and it was just really nice. Or reading the mangas, which is essentially rereading the story, makes me want to like reread the whole series in its entirety again, and I'm probably going to. The next book I read was The Bright Side of Going Dark by Kelly Harms. I gave this book 3 stars, and essentially in this book we follow 2 POVs. One is a sister who works in the tech industry, finds out that her sister attempted suicide. So this book deals heavily with conversations around that topic and all the different aspects of it, as well as grief, because the other character is grieving the loss of not just her dog, but also her brother, and not from suicide, but just in general. So this book has really heavy topics, and it also discusses like social media's impact on how people perceive us and how we perceive ourselves and what we put value in and stuff like that. And so like the conversations I thought were really good, but they were very thick conversations. It was very clear what the author was trying to say throughout the book, and you weren't allowed to forget it. I guess isn't a bad thing, but it also doesn't allow for the reader to think for themselves and to come to their own conclusions. But maybe some people reading this really need that heavy-handedness, because it is such a serious topic. And by the end of it, how it wraps up the self-harm and like all that kind of talk is like in the middle. It's good because it gives you such a very basic reason to keep living, and it's not this complicated, oh, everything's worked out. It's just like, you know what, I'm gonna keep living because of this tiny thing, and you know, any reason to keep living is a good reason. So like, and as someone who has struggled with that myself, like sometimes you just gotta find the tiniest thing and be like, yes, and just hold on to that until better things come around. Hope that makes sense. And the characters themselves, like the 2 POVs, were both really enjoyable to read. I didn't prefer one over the other. So yeah, hope that makes sense. The next book I read was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a novella, really short. so short that like I was listening to it on audio, and by the time it ended I was like, oh, we're done? Okay. But in this book it's essentially a grandfather trying to find a way to tell his grandson what is happening to him. And he is experiencing dementia and is essentially like losing himself and his memories and stuff like that. And it is very sad. I didn't cry, but I almost cried. Like, tears were welling up, and I was just trying to hold them back because I knew if I was to start crying, I wouldn't stop, and then I wouldn't be able to hear the audiobook. I picked this up because I heard someone else talking about this, and I was like, well, you know, I'm experiencing that right now, so I don't know, maybe it would help. And I thought it was done very beautifully. There were times that maybe I would have understood it better reading it, but there were times where it was a little confusing, and I don't know if that was just me or if it was actually the book and the writing, because we are in the main POV of the grandfather, and he's confused about what's going on and doesn't understand, and is stuff like that. And it was just really quick, really short, but also like really good. Like, I don't think this needed to be any longer. It got everything it needed to out on the table and said it all very plainly and beautifully, and it was really nice. The next book I read was Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I gave this book 2 stars as well. I don't know what I was expecting, because I just don't enjoy heavy sci-fi, as in like space travel sci-fi. It's just not something I super enjoy, and that is essentially what this book is. I enjoyed it, and it was so short that I will probably continue the series if they're just as short, just because like I liked it. I think this would have benefited more to being a longer book, at least for me, because things happen and they happen so fast, and I don't care about the characters. I was not able to come to care about any of them or any of their safety or even the main character. It was just like oh, this has happened. Okay. It felt very much like I was reading a book or watching from the sidelines, and just because of that, I was just very detached from the book. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just because it happened so quickly. This was another book that by the time it finished, I was like, oh, we're done. And a lot of the scenes, they would happen and I'd be like, oh, we're done. So I'll probably pick up the rest of them because it is an interesting topic. Again, I don't really know what I was expecting from a heavy sci-fi book. The next book that I read it's 1 book, but it's 6 books, and I've read the first 2 of the 6 books, but it's the serialization of On Wings of Ash and Dust by Brittany Wang. She is an author tuber here on YouTube, and the first one is called Wings of Betrayal, and the second one was A Palace of Potions. I read them both this month. It's very clearly 1 book. It's very clearly that the author, and like she's said this before, so like, but it's just very clear to see that she wrote this book all in one go and then decided later to break it up just because it was sort of convenient to do that. I like the story. I gave the first one 3 stars and I gave the second one 2 stars. But overall, I'm still going to keep reading it because I feel like it feels weird to rate each of these sections, because if I was to just read it as a book, I would be like, this would just be part of the story and not the whole story. I don't know how to explain this because essentially the synopsis is just the first book, The Wings of Betrayal. So if you start reading this, I would suggest to read the whole thing unless you absolutely hate it at the beginning, because the first book is very much set up. We're getting to the main event. And then the second book kind of starts the main event stuff. Yeah, I don't know how else to talk about this. The next book I read was my favorite book of January, and I'm so excited about it, and that is Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sandberry. She is another author tuber here, and picking up this book, I was excited for it and really intrigued by it, but I honestly didn't think I would like it as much as I did. The magic system and the magical dynamics and how they get their magical abilities and tying in all the ancestors, I loved every bit of that. So much. Content warning, however, for graphic depictions of slavery and whippings and stuff like that, as well as a murder takes place. And so it's just like, it is a lot of depictions of like gore and blood and things like that. And this kind of reminded me of Encanto a little bit, in the way that like this family is a huge family that all lives together. They all have magical abilities, but they only get their magical abilities after a certain point, and they have to do this thing to get them. In Encanto, they have to touch the door and figure it out, but in this book, they have to actually complete a task, and our main character's task is she has to kill someone, and not just anyone, but her first love. And so that's a lot. I only had a few things that like I was like, whoa, what is going on? When the big showdown happens, you know, that felt like it came out of nowhere. I was like, what? Very whiplashy. Also, the ending. I liked the ending. I sobbed. Very wonderful, but like, I don't know how a sequel will tie in. I'm still interested to read it, but like this book to me felt like it was a solid standalone. And I also really enjoyed how it ended. It was very wonderful. I was crying so heavily because I had grown attached to all the characters. Not just the main character, but like literally the entire family. And it's a big family. So the author did an amazing job of writing these characters and making them feel real. And yeah, it's her debut book. And so because I loved it so much, I'm already like super interested in anything else she has to write. The next book was the final book in the Four Kingdoms series by Melanie Sellier, The Princess Search. This is a Ugly Duckling retelling, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was cute. I really enjoyed like the traveling aspect and stuff like that, and this book was actually written much more recently than all the other books, and it was supposed to be just 4 books for the Four Kingdoms, but she came back and wrote a story for one of the princes, and in doing so, she tries to throw in a super quick romance for the other single brother that was in this book, and that I didn't really enjoy. It was very insta-lovey in the background. It was essentially just, I don't want to write a book for you. Here you go real quick. There's their happy ending. Everyone has a happy ending now. Not much really to say. The series is very fluffy. Don't look into this series too much. Don't try to dig down into it and like pick things apart, because it's all gonna crumble. But if you just want to have a fun time, a cute little happy little romances, with fairy tales and princesses and all this other stuff, this is the series for you. The next book I read was Devolution by Max Brooks. This was a reread. This was one of my favorite, if not my favorite book from last year, and last year I gave it 5 stars, but this time with rereading it, I gave it 4 stars. I think because I already knew what was happening, I was able to like dive deeper into the book and see more of the things that I didn't really enjoy about it, because the first time I was just wrapped up in the whirlwind of Bigfoot's coming in and murdering people. I really enjoy cryptozoology, and so anytime I can see that in a book, and with it also being like a thriller horror book, like, yes, please. The audiobook is a full cast, and I definitely enjoyed listening to the audiobook over reading it physically. And I think this book would have done better if it wasn't an interview journal style. Like, the interviews and the excerpts from other books and other quotes and stuff like that sort of tie in, but they kind of slow down the pacing of the book. And also, by the end of it, it doesn't make sense that she's still writing in this journal and she's writing all this down. So I think it would have done better for us to just be in the moment with them at the time and like keep the momentum going up and up and up and just watch it all happen. And then maybe have a prologue and an epilogue where it's from a different POV of them trying to figure out what happened. But then, like, majority of the book, we're in there because we know what happened. And I also loved the irony and the character dynamics within who they were before this happened and who they were after, and watching some people rise to the occasion and being a surprise, and other people absolutely crumbling. And one of the things in this book is, like, you meet your true self in adversity, and I have no clue who I would be in that situation. I would hope that I would be someone who would rise, but you know, who knows? Some of the things just didn't truly make sense when you actually like look at it. But overall, fun, wild ride. Love Bigfoot. And then the last book I read was the second volume of the Soulless manga by Gail Carriger. And the ending of this book, the ending in the book itself is heart-wrenching, but seeing it drawn out and seeing their faces at the end of this book hurt so much more. And oh my goodness, I'm not gonna give spoilers. This artist just draws them all perfectly. And in this book we meet Madame LeFou, who is one of my favorite characters. She was a character who was also in Gail Carriger's other series, the Finishing School series, and now she's all grown up. And we get to meet her, and she's drawn perfectly. And yeah, if you're here for criticisms about Gail Carriger, you're never gonna get them. Because her books are just amazing. Those are all the books I read. I read 14 books this month, which is a lot, but also a lot of them were shorter books. So that lends to it. But yeah, if you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts on them. Also, let me know what your favorite read was from this month. I always like seeing what people's favorite read of the month is. Again, mine was Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sansbury. And if I have to recommend any book off this list, it's that one. Hopefully you found some reads that you're interested in. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.